Hey guys, I ended up at the Fox booth. I'm with Mark. He's a marketing manager. And man, they have some cool stuff that we're gonna get into in a second, but I thought it'd be fun to go over like the parts of suspension and just if there's anything e-bike specific, because that's what this channel is about, is e-bikes.
Oh, right on.
Yeah,
we've got a couple of e-bike specific forks. This is a standard 36, but we also make an e-bike version of it that has a little thicker upper tube and a solid crown, so it's a little stiffer chassis for an e-bike.
When you say upper tube, are you talking about
these tubes?
Oh, so the stanchion, like the thickness
they're just a thicker
of the metal?
wall. Yeah,
thicker wall. Okay.
So it's a little beefier fork for some of the e-bike applications. Some of the other bikes they just like the standard chassis on it. And so this is a factory model, so it comes with the Kashima upper tubes, and it comes with our new Fit Grip 2 damper. And so we got a little cutaway here to kind of show some of the internals.
So this is compression, right?
Yeah, so high and low speed compression, and then this one actually has high and low speed rebound. So it's matching what like a Float X2 would have with the high and low speed compression, high and low speed rebound.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So there's like two chambers here. Do they both have fluids? And then as you adjust this, like the speed of like how quickly it rebounds slows down, or how quickly it compresses slows down?
Exactly. So this would be solid oil, and when the main piston compresses, it's displacing fluid with this shaft and it's forcing it through this valving. So depending where you have your high and low speed settings, it's going to change how hard it is to push through there, and it's going to change the compression. When this pulls back, it's going to flow through the rebound circuit, and then depending where your adjustments are, it's going to regulate how quickly it can come back.
That's perfect. And you mentioned a minute ago, and I was confused because it was like, oh, 36, like that's already pretty wide stanchion. So that's with the Kashima, this is like anodized. It's designed to reduce stiction. It's like hard.
Yeah, it's a little more durable than standard anodized.
But then you talked about the thickness of the wall. So maybe the e-bike specific fork could be a little heavier, but it's heavy duty because the bike's heavier.
Exactly.
Is that the idea? And you don't care about weight as much.
Yeah, and especially with the power assist.
Yeah.
So, and you can, it's a little more durable for those bikes, a little better handling. Some of the guys that are out there looking to try and lighten up the e-bike as much as possible, they'd just rather run a standard fork. And we do have some e-bike specific tunes.
That's what I was wondering. Okay, because there's factory. What does that mean? Is that your highest end forks?
Yeah, so factory would be like this fork, where it's all the bells and whistles, lots of adjustment, Kashima upper tube, so maximum durability on the upper tube and the smoothest coating possible. Questions here. I love forks. I love suspension. I'm all about comfort. So I wanted to go through some of these parts for people. So we got, this is a thru-axle, 15 millimeter. Yeah, thru-axle, and we call it quick release thru-axle because it's got the lever.
Yeah.
As opposed to bolts.
Bolts, are those just sturdier because it's a downhill fork?
It's going to clamp it a little more solid, a little more handling. This one, it's just a lot more convenient.
Yeah.
You're changing a flat. The little bit of stiffness you might get, people aren't worried about it because they'd rather just have the quick release.
For sure. And then these are the lowers?
So lower legs, arch.
Okay.
Pretty common terms that we use.
A lot of people, e-bikes, they'll have a fender that's mounted to this or a light, but then the light bounces up and down. So I like the ones where they put the lights up higher.
Yeah, because this part's moving with the wheels. So
it's like unsuspended, right? Yeah.
And then we usually call these upper tubes. People call them stanchions as well. And then you've got your crown, and then steer tube.
And this one's tapered. So is that designed to be a little bit like sturdier for like rigorous applications?
Exactly. So everything's kind of gone to what we call a 1.5 inch tapered.
So 1.125 to 1.5 inches.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's pretty standard nowadays. There was 1.5 inches all the way through, but it made everything so big and bulky that they kind of made the in-between.
Now, I have seen 1.125 inches, like 1.25 inches, I think. Have you ever seen that, like on cross-country bikes or something?
Yeah, and there were some road bikes that had done that.
The gravel grinders, maybe, what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and so this has pretty much become the standard.
So this is the standard. Okay, and then you mentioned this has all the bells and whistles, and I'm noticing that not only does it have like a compression, like lockout kind of thing, but it has a clicker, and then there's even like an inner dial. Like, tell me what this does.
So the outer adjuster, so you can see right there, it's high speed compression, and then the inner one would do low speed.
So like a low, what does this mean?
So it's sometimes people will ask if it has to do with the speed you're riding.
Yeah.
It's really the speed and the movement of the fork. So like a low speed application it's really more of the rider input. So like a weight shift, like if you're hitting the brakes and your fork slowly squeezes in, so it'd be like kind of a slow movement. that'd be a low speed compression. So if you want to hold you up a little more, you turn it in. If it's a little too rough, turn it back out. High speed is more like coming off a jump or hitting a really hard impact, and you need it to move real fast. And so that's a high speed.
Interesting.
And
are there two chambers, or how does it like adjust that?
So what it's really doing is the low speed would be just a whole bleed through the middle. And once you accelerate the fluid flow really high, it can't flow through that hole anymore. It can't go fast enough. So then it starts flexing these shims open and transitions to more of a high speed. And so there's these shims that'll flex open, crack it open. The harder you hit it, the more they're going to pop open. And as soon as the pressure's not there from that impact, they'll close back down and kind of settle the suspension down.
That makes a lot of sense. And then this is an air fork, so under this is just a valve, so you could pump it up. And this is almost like, well, what am I thinking? There's preload when you have a spring fork. So this, if you pump it up with more air, that's for like a heavier rider?
Yeah, and then what we do is on the inside here is this piece, we call it a bypass port, and the seal sits right on it. And it's specially designed so it doesn't damage the seal. When you air up the upper chamber, and this is that static, no load, it can actually sneak past that seal into the negative chamber, so they're both the same pressure starting. And what that does is it makes it where it can get into the travel real easy. If you don't have that negative chamber, it's really hard to initiate it. You get a lot of stiction, and so the opposing forces make it zero in the beginning, and real easy to move. And so it also makes it real easy where if you're a lighter rider and you only put 50 PSI here,
that's me,
it's going to equalize it.
Okay.
If you're Greg Menard and you're racing World Cup downhill, you might have 90 in it.
Whoa.
And so it'll automatically equalize from the beginning. And then as you compress it, it pushes past that little bypass port, seals off the positive chamber, and builds pressure so it gets firmer and firmer and firmer.
Now I've heard about tokens, and that's so you're taking up volume that would otherwise be air volume, and you can't compress a token, so now the volume, the potential compression is lower, which means you won't bottom out as easily.
Exactly.
Is that right?
So there's these little plastic spacers we can put in there, and they basically just take up volume. So we call them volume spacers.
Okay.
And what it does is shrinks that air chamber. So if it's smaller and you compress it 5 inches like a fork, it's going to get really small and build pressure faster. If you take a couple of them out, the chamber's bigger, doesn't compress as small.
More progressive.
So it doesn't build pressure as fast.
Dude, this is so cool. And a minute ago you were talking about this is the crown, and then I see a double crown fork over here. And this is for, again, a downhill. So we went up to 49, so that's a thicker upper or
And so this
stanchion.
one specifically is the 27.5 and the 26-inch wheel one. We basically call them 40s because it's a 40 upper tube.
Okay.
And of course, that's a 36. This one's called 49 because when we started racing on 29ers, we wanted to bring a little attention to it because there weren't that many out there. So we just call it the 49. And it just
so the
stopped.
stanchions are actually 40. Thank you.
It's still really
Appreciate
a 40,
that.
but it is confusing because we actually went outside our normal naming. And then this one, it actually runs an 1.1/8 tube because it has these two big upper tubes to help support it. And then of course, two crowns. And what this does is it's a much bigger, stiffer structure for the aggressive riding that the downhill riders are doing.
Are there like double crown forks that are still tapered, or are they all like 1.1/8?
Yep, there's some.
There are some. Okay.
Yeah, and so we don't make any, so you can just get a different headset race that adapts it. And so because our tubes are so big, there's a lot of support there, so there really wasn't a need for it from our side.
Now we've got the rear suspension here, and I see this one's just like a spring. By the way, do these air forks have springs in them too, or is it just air?
It's just all air.
That's awesome because it keeps it lightweight.
A lot lighter, real easy to tune. You can do these little increments, and then right out of the box, it's going to work for somebody that's really light to somebody really heavy.
I've heard something about springs being like, if you're hitting this a lot and the air heats up or it changes the ride or something, like why would you go with the spring ever? Like
with the rear shock, you've got leverage on it where the shock may only move 2 inches, but your rear wheel moves 4.
Right.
So this is doing twice the work as what a 1-to-1 fork would do, where it moves 1 inch on the wheel, 1 inch at the fork.
Yeah.
So you get a little more heat that they have to handle.
Okay.
And a little bit a little rougher ride for them, basically. Air spring, you still get that great properties of really adjustability, kind of works for anybody. It has the volume spacers to tune it. And so a lot of adjustability. But the coil spring has this really smooth, beautiful curve that is really consistent, really good transition changes, isn't affected by heat like a really rough downhill.
Yeah.
A little bit of a weight penalty, but some people just love the way it feels.
Yeah.
And
they look cool.
Yeah, and so this is a special spring that's actually, it's a Sls Spring or super light spring.
Cool.
And it's actually steel, but it weighs as much as what the titanium springs weigh.
Interesting.
And what it is, it's just a special way they make it, special steel, special process, and then they cost half as much as a titanium spring.
Whoa, yeah, that's key. And I noticed, does this have oil in it, and that's where you're getting some adjustments here on compression and rebound?
Yeah, so these
again?
will run a high-speed compression and low-speed compression, and then high and low on the rebound.
Wow.
So this actually cycles. It pushes fluid through here, it goes through this valving, and it actually goes back through another little thing and back around behind the piston. So it's cycling a lot of oil through this. This does the same thing, it just has an air sleeve over the top, but they're basically the same internals.
And this is bigger because you need space for the air.
Right, so you need the volume.
Now, you said this has high and low speed. Like, how do you do, does the blue thing and then also the middle?
It's actually there's that 6mm hex,
oh,
and then
there's
the 3mm in there.
Whoa, dude, you guys make some awesome stuff,
sneaking
man.
it in there. And then this one
This is
actually
so
has
cool.
a lever to firm it up if you're just going up a hill and you want to kind of shut off the compression a bit, just to help it climb.
Yeah, if you're getting like bobbing or whatever.
You can get it on the coil too, we just don't have it on this one.
I feel like we've touched on everything except the brand new super special electronic suspension craziness.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is on any e-bikes yet, yeah?
Not yet, but I think they're looking at it.
That would be cool.
So this is actually a Switchblade Prototype. Pivot didn't make it for Switchblade. They chose to put it on the 5.5, and so they have some of those in their booth. But we had this on display just to show it off.
What does it do? Like, what's happening here?
So the real goal is, because bikes are human powered, is how can we increase efficiency?
Yeah.
And so what this was really doing, ideally, you're in the most efficient mode or the firm mode at all times, and it goes to the open or a little more plush mode when you need it.
Okay.
And so what this can do is it has a sensor at the fork. It has a sensor back at the axle, which is kind of tucked in there.
Okay.
And then it actually has a sensor on the controller, the base of this. So it can tell when there's an impact at the front or the rear. It can tell when you're in free fall, and it can tell if you're climbing, traversing, or descending.
Wow.
And it reads all that, and it controls whether you're in firm or you're in open. So
now, can it sense, like, we've got a hit that happened at the front, get ready, and it like tells the rear?
That's exactly what it does.
Whoa.
And so sometimes it's they're
awesome.
paired, and sometimes they're decoupled is what we call it.
Okay.
Especially if you're in like a flat corner and you only hit a bump with the front, you don't want the front just to dive, you want them together.
Yeah.
So it's just real balanced. But if you're climbing a hill and you just tap something in the front, but you're going to pedal up a ledge, you don't want the rear to drop too. So they're going to work independently.
This is awesome. Do you have anything else to say about your suspension or anything else? I feel like it's been an awesome little crash course, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Maybe one more thing on Live Valve is it's basically our standard suspension with the addition of electronics.
Okay.
And what really makes it possible is it's really fast. So it can sense a bump at the front wheel, and it can activate the suspension in 3 milliseconds.
Wow.
So it's 100 times faster in the blink of an eye. And so it'll hit the bump, and you won't feel at the handlebars. So it's super quick.
And it's called Live Valve?
Live Valve. So what it's doing is kind of complicated, but what you get is is real simple. You basically just turn it on, go ride your bike, and it takes care of everything for you.
That's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate it. You guys, what's the website for Fox?
It's ridefox.com.
Ridefox.com. Well, I'll continue to see your stuff on these e-bikes, I'm sure, and I really appreciate the updates, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
This guy's having a blast with that water bottle. I was like,
it's like the best dog toy ever.
It's like, what's going on? But it's like when you get a kid a present and they play with the box for hours and hours. Yeah. It's cute. He was riding around in the sidecar thing earlier.
Yeah,
that thing.
license plate.
Yeah, that was really cool. Have a great show, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
Later.